Okay, so now the council lets you have a single household in the primary and the secondary dwelling, and as a result, now that you can separately rent out granny flats, what is the difference between a granny flat and a dual occupancy? Now, this is a question that was posed to me earlier this week by a building designer, and I thought I'd use this week's video to share the answer that I gave her with you guys. So, in my opinion, there's probably 5 key differences these days. First and foremost, when it comes to the granny flat, it still needs to look ancillary in terms of scale compared to the primary dwelling. Whereas when it comes to dual occupancy, it can look like exactly the same as the primary dwelling. So the two dwellings can look same in terms of size, bulk, scale, all of that sort of stuff. With primary and secondary dwelling, the primary dwelling needs to be the big thing and the secondary dwelling needs to be smaller in scale. It needs to look like a granny flat. Kind of leads to the second point. When it comes to granny flats, you're limited to a maximum internal floor area, excluding garages, of 80 square metres. So internal floor areas minus garages, 80 square metres. When it comes to dual occupancy, there is no GFA or gross floor area limit. There is kind of still a limit though. You're limited to 45% site cover if you want to tick the boxes, but we regularly push that up to like 49%, sometimes just over 50%. So yeah, there is that small limit when it comes to a granny flat. Next, you unfortunately cannot sell a granny flat independently of the primary dwelling. So when it comes to selling the property, you're selling the site as a whole with the primary and secondary dwelling on it. When it comes to the dual occupancy, however, you can sell each one independently as kind of units. So you can set up a body corporate and sell them as if they're townhouses or just standard sort of units and go to totally different independent parties. So obviously you're going to get more resale value when they're two independent dwellings as opposed to a combined sort of setup. Next, what's the next point I was going to say? Infrastructure charges. So when it comes to dual occupancies, you need to pay infrastructure charges. These days, currently, it's just under 35 grand, whereas in Brisbane, you do not currently pay infrastructure charges. And as far as I'm aware, there's no plans to sort of bring in any charges in the foreseeable future for a granny flat. So yeah, you pay an extra 35 grand for the privilege of doing a dual occupancy. Then last but not least, and this is probably the biggest one we're finding these days, there are additional requirements when it comes to the certification stage for dual occupancy. So you have to fire rate the dwellings independently, there's additional accessibility requirements, all of that sort of stuff that you need to account for or factor in that don't necessarily apply when it comes to granny flats or secondary dwellings. So yeah, basically, in summary, a granny flat, aka secondary dwelling, is a smaller, more humble, small scale, can't think of any other way to describe it right now, sort of dwelling, and it still stays tied to that primary dwelling, even though you can independently rent it out. Whereas a dual occupancy is two separate dwellings, equal size, equal scale, that can be independently sold. So hopefully that gives you a bit more insight into the differences between those two uses. As I always like to say, until next time, thanks for watching.
For all you red tape lovers out there, I have one thing to say. Well, no, actually, I've got 3. Number 1, the advice provided in these videos is general in nature. It's not site specific. You would be a silly Billy to go and make financial decisions based on this advice without first checking with the town planner. Don't be a silly Billy. Number 2, Brisbane town planning is in no way linked to Brisbane City Council. The views expressed in these videos are my own, not council's. So if you don't like them, blame me, not council. Number 3, what was my number 3? Oh yeah, the views expressed in these videos are accurate at the time of recording. If you're watching this video back 10 years from now, the views may not be so accurate. That's all.